The greater good.
Hey everybody, Greater Good Mining here. I have been honored to be able to attend Mining Disrupt 2024. I'm still here, but I wanted to get this video out really quick because I thought it was a very interesting conversation between the CEO of Marathon Digital Holdings, Fred Thiel, and Senator Ted Cruz. They talk about Bitcoin, they talk about monetary policy in the United States. So it is a very, very interesting conversation. So if you like that sort of thing and you like this content, do me a favor, hit the like button. It helps more than you know. Consider subscribing to my channel. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into the video. It's a great fireside chat.
What was it that sparked your interest in Bitcoin in the first place?
Well, look, it is incredible what is happening with Bitcoin and with cryptocurrency everywhere. And I'll tell you, I think back to a decade ago where I had a friend of mine who tried to convince me then to invest in Bitcoin. And I still remember sitting there saying a decade ago, I don't understand this at all, so I don't put my money where I don't understand it. And I think I can say that was a catastrophic financial decision. I suspect I'm not the only one, and I have a feeling there are a lot of people who remember a conversation when they didn't act on Bitcoin and the numbers were very different. Look, I would say a couple of years ago, as it was growing and growing and growing, I wanted to understand better what's going on. And one of the virtues of the Senate is you can sit down, and I began inviting people who were experts in Bitcoin to just sit down over dinner and say, okay, tell me what this is. How does this work? Why does it matter? Explain to me the pros and cons. And I'm not afraid to ask stupid questions. And listen, I serve in the United States Senate, which is a body with a median age of about 106. so saying I'm one of the more knowledgeable people in the Senate is kind of like being the tallest dwarf. It's not necessarily all that difficult. There are not a lot of people in the Senate who understand this at all. And I think it is incredibly important, number one, for what it represents for freedom. Look, I am incredibly bullish on Bitcoin because the government can't control it. I don't want the government controlling money.
So, you talk about freedom in Bitcoin. How in your mind does it embody freedom and independence? What are the characteristics about it that you really appreciate?
Well, look, it breaks up the government monopoly on money. And the problem, as we've discovered, when you put politicians in charge of money, they have an inevitable temptation to print more and more and more of it. We see inflation, we see the value of the dollar going down. The fact that there are only going to be 21 million Bitcoins is a big damn deal. That there's not some politician tomorrow who can say, I want more guns, I want more butter, let's make 22 million. That would be a disastrous development for Bitcoin. It's also outside of government monitoring, and I've got to say, more and more you see in Washington a federal government that wants to monitor every financial transaction every American makes. And I again think that is a terrible thing. The same people in Washington who hate Bitcoin, they hate cash. If they could get rid of cash, they could. And I'm very pro-cash for the same reason. I think the American citizenry ought to be able to spend their damn money any damn way they want to. And you see the downsides when you look at China, when you look at, for example, their social scores, that they can then use control over money to control you and make sure you do whatever they want. And I think that's exactly backwards. I think government should work for the people and not the other way around.
Well, one of your colleagues in the Senate, Senator Warren, seems to believe that a CBDC, a central bank digital currency, would solve all ills.
Well, look, Elizabeth Warren is totally wrong when it comes to Bitcoin and just about everything else. But she is a full-blooded Native American, so I'll give her that.
Pocahontas, I think somebody called her.
She got a job on that.
Yeah.
Listen, Elizabeth Warren hates Bitcoin for the same reason the Chinese communists hate Bitcoin. Because they cannot control it. This all comes down to who has the power And look back at the beginning of the Biden administration. You remember the original legislation that this administration was putting forward that they called Build Back Better. I called it Build Back Broke. It included within it a requirement that banks notify the Treasury Department of every single financial transaction every American does in excess of $600. Now you think about daily life, that is every month, that's every rent payment, that's every mortgage payment, that's every car payment. I mean, it's more and more almost becoming every grocery store bill. I mean, it is, they want the federal government to be able to monitor every single thing that is purchased or sold in America. And they always justify it in terms of preventing crime, preventing tax evasion. And I think the more power that is concentrated in government, the more liberty is imperiled. I'm reminded, Thomas Jefferson years ago said, if a nation expects to be ignorant and free, it expects what never was and never will be. I think the more we can limit, I'm a big believer that government should be limited to doing only those tasks we need it for. Look, there are very important roles for the government. I'm not an anarchist. We have a national military that protects us and keeps us safe. That's an important role for government. But the role of government should not be monitoring whether it is the email communications, and there are a lot of my colleagues in Washington that want to intercept every email communication, every text people send. I believe in privacy. I believe in protecting the ability of people to be free from government control and monitoring, and it is precisely the inverse of this. If you are a big government collectivist, putting government in charge of money is one of the most powerful tools for implementing the policies you want to implement.
So, the state of Texas, which you represent, has been hugely welcoming to Bitcoin miners. And we've all seen the benefits large dispatchable loads, or essentially the ability to curtail, has had on the Texas grid. How do you see Bitcoin mining's role evolving in Texas?
Look, I want Texas to be an oasis for Bitcoin. I want America to be an oasis for Bitcoin across the world, and I want Texas to be ground zero. But I will say this, look, I actually think the competition, we're in Florida right now. I want Florida to be really strong and effective on Bitcoin and everything else. One of the most healthy dynamics in America right now is the competition back and forth from Texas and Florida. And I think each state makes the other better. I want Florida saying, how can we beat Texas? How can we create an even better environment that's more welcoming to small businesses, to entrepreneurship? Now, to be honest, Florida's gorgeous, but I think Texas will win that battle. But I want that competition back and forth. I think Texas, when it comes to Bitcoin mining has all sorts of natural advantages. One, we have abundant energy. Texas is, and I think always will be, the energy capital of the world. And it is both the expertise of the state, but it's also the ethos of the state. Look, you think of Texas, we were founded by a bunch of wildcatters with fourth grade educations who began drilling holes in the ground, and one after the other, they became the richest men on earth. And I live in Houston. Houston is the energy capital of the world. What I love about Houston, no one gives a damn who your daddy is. I think it's the most entrepreneurial big city in the world because it is a place where people can come from anywhere in the world, and if you have dreams, if you have ambitions, if you have talent, you can achieve them. And I think Bitcoin is at the intersection where obviously energy is critically important, and we have abundant, affordable energy, combined with an ethos that welcomes entrepreneurship, that welcomes going out and building a better mousetrap. And I think that's right at the heart of Bitcoin and crypto more generally.
I mean, Professor Scott Galloway has said that the 70s and 80s were the era of the energy industry being the highest market cap, most valuable companies. And then the 90s and the early 2000s, it was technology. And now we're entering the phase where the energy companies and the technology companies join together to really drive innovation going forth. Texas has been a great state for that. But there have been some grumblings at some committees in the state Senate to try and limit Bitcoin mining's access to energy and availability. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, I don't think Texas is going to do that, and I don't want to see Texas do that. Now, obviously, the state legislature is a different body than the body in which I serve, so that's not something I have a direct vote on. But I am not shy about using my voice. And listen, I think Texas should welcome Bitcoin mining and entrepreneurship writ large, and so I have every confidence the state legislature is not going to do something stupid, the governor is not going to do something stupid. We want people, you know, all right, you're California. You came here, there's a satirical headline in the Babylon Bee. It says, Texas is building a wall on its southern border, consisting of nothing but discarded one-way U-Haul trucks from California. and it's an amazing, all right, this is a room that understands finance and understands pricing. One of my favorite statistics is the cost of a one-way U-Haul from California to Texas is more than 300% the cost of a U-Haul going the other way. And actually, I'll give you even better, the cost of a U-Haul from Palo Alto to Austin, Texas is 5x. A 24-foot U-Haul going from Palo Alto to Austin is $5,000. The U-Haul going back is $974.
That says something.
Yeah. They need somebody to drive the things back to bring the next load.
Absolutely. So,
But I will say as a caveat, all the Californians coming to Texas and coming to Florida, don't vote like you're going to turn us into a ninny state blue dystopia. If you like that, stay there.
the rumor is that Gavin Newsom was thinking of moving to Florida when he retires. Hopefully that's not true. So,
you know, I would suggest Gavin move about 90 miles south of here. There's another communist paradise there, and it reminds me of something Reagan used to say. He used to say, the thing the left never notices is on the Berlin Wall, the machine guns are all pointed in one direction. And as a Cuban American, I put it differently, which is the left doesn't notice that in Florida, the rafts are all coming one way. Just once. I'd like to see some Hollywood star who celebrates socialism come down to Florida, get on a raft, and head 90 miles south.
Yeah.
And you can have your communist paradise. Let me know how you like it. But somehow that basic cause and effect they can't figure out.
yeah, Bitcoin has this magical power of drawing you in. You yourself have become enthralled with it. I understand you maybe have become a Bitcoin miner yourself.
I am. I own 3 miners. They're in Iran, Texas. They are hashing right now. In fact, let's see. I'll pull up right now. Well, can't, if I can get Face ID to work. All right, there apparently is no coverage here, so maybe I can't pull anything up. All right, never mind. So they're hashing every day about 30 or 40 bucks worth of Bitcoin a day.
There you go. We appreciate you.
And I check it daily. It's a little bit like crack. I'm like, oh wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, people think that Meta defined the code on dopamine hits. Boy, watching Bitcoin miners mine away and looking at the hash rate.
And I'm sure you're sitting there, Fred, going 30 or 40 bucks a day. That's really cute.
I get alerts on my phone every time we win a block, and it's a lottery. We love it. But thank you for your contributions to the compute to the Bitcoin blockchain, helping secure Bitcoin. Talking of security, some candidates have talked about the fact that they now realize it's a national security issue. Mining Bitcoin in the U.S. is a national security issue. What are your thoughts on that?
Look, I think that is absolutely right, and I think when it comes to both money and power are intertwined. And we want money here, but we also want freedom here. Now look, let me say a broader sort of political point, and I've been to a number of Bitcoin and crypto conferences, and what is interesting sometimes is I think some of the crypto community, I view the crypto community kind of where big tech was about 10 or 15 years ago. And about 10 or 15 years ago, big tech, I think, was at a fork in the road. where they could have gone down, number one, a libertarian road of leave me the hell alone and let me go and do my own thing, or they chose instead road number two, which is a nanny state. We want to control you. We want to censor you. We want to get in bed with big government. We want to be authoritarian. And tragically, big tech chose option two. I think the world would have been very different had they chosen another road. Now, I think the Bitcoin community, look, I suspect there's some folks here, even a few years ago, considered yourself Bernie Bros. And there was kind of a not very politically involved community sort of looking around, and to the extent you thought a government didn't like it much, but that seemed fine. I will say Elizabeth Warren is helping enormously with that. and there is, I think sometimes in the Bitcoin community, people are a little bit utopian because there's a sense of like Thanos from the Avengers, like that Bitcoin is inevitable. And let me say frankly, there is, I think, one force strong enough to devastate Bitcoin, and that is the federal government. And I think you underestimate the perils of the United States government at your own jeopardy. And for folks that say, okay, we'll be fine, I wonder how many people here have El Salvadorian passports. Like, yes, Bitcoin will survive, but if America acts like communist China has to crush it, that would be a devastating development. We don't want to see that happen. We would see it move elsewhere. That would be highly problematic, but it also would be problematic because of the loss of liberty of Americans. I want us to have financial freedom, and seeing, look, I worry a great deal. You asked about a CBDC. This is the holy grail. It's the holy grail of the Chinese communists. It's the holy grail of Elizabeth Warren, because they want the Fed to, number one, control our money, and number two, be able to monitor it. And I'm very concerned. Look, a CBDC is not going to pass Congress. It's not going to clear a filibuster. I have legislation, I've introduced legislation to ban the federal government and ban the Fed from ever creating a CBDC. I want to keep government the heck out of that business. But I am very worried that the Fed will do so unilaterally, that Jay Powell is getting a lot of pressure from Elizabeth Warren and from her fellow travelers. And listen, if there is a second Biden administration, I think the risk of the Fed doing that is very real, and it is a real problem.
So, reports say there are about 55 million voters in the United States that have crypto or have owned crypto. So it's a powerful voting bloc. And clearly it's starting to find its voice. What would you recommend to Bitcoiners? Should they contact their congressmen? Should they contact their senators? Should they contact their representatives at the state level? What do you think we should do to mobilize the Bitcoin community so that what you're saying doesn't happen?
Yeah, look, all of the above. Get engaged, speak out, use your voice. 55 million people is a lot of people. Use your voice, speak out online. Go get engaged and support a candidate for office. Go volunteer. Let others, I guarantee you there are people in the Bitcoin community who don't vote, who stay home and say, no, what good does voting do? Well, that's a good way to see your rights taken away if you don't get engaged. I would say also get engaged financially. Look, running for office, that's part of what you have to do is raising money. I can tell you, I think my Senate website is tedcruz.org. That's my campaign website. I think I'm the only senator who accepts Bitcoin on my website. So you can contribute Bitcoin. A full Bitcoin would be great, by the way. But we will take smaller portions as well.
Satoshis are welcome too.
Yeah, indeed.
Absolutely. So we have a budding industry in the U.S. around building technology and hardware for Bitcoin mining. Any thoughts on what we should be doing at the federal level and other places to try and incentivize more technology companies to develop technologies that'll help build and broaden Bitcoin?
Look, I will say, when it comes to Washington and the regulatory scheme for Bitcoin, my principal position is move slowly. That The level of ignorance in Washington is terrifying. I doubt there are 10 senators who could tell you what a Bitcoin is. I mean, it really is. I had a colleague not too long ago who referred to the internet as a system of tubes. This is not a technologically savvy group. Some of my colleagues reminisce about Eisenhower. So we don't want folks, and by the way, we had legislation that I led the effort on the Senate floor to stop that would define every Bitcoin miner as a securities broker-dealer. And the problem is when government moves, particularly when it doesn't know what it's doing, it has the potential to break things. And to break things completely ignorant of the consequences. Will there have to be a legal and regulatory set of rules that arises around Bitcoin and crypto going forward? Sure. But I think we should proceed very carefully and very cautiously. Now, in terms of specifically incentivizing hardware for mining, I don't know that we need the federal government. I'm, as a general matter, not a fan of that kind of corporate policy from the government picking winners and losers. I think what we want to do is have a tax system and regulatory system that is beneficial to entrepreneurs and small businesses and anyone putting capital at risk. And I frankly don't want politicians figuring out where to put that capital at risk. I want the private sector, because y'all are going to be a lot better at it than anyone in Washington.
So I would take it to say that you're against an energy tax specifically targeting Bitcoin miners as part of the budget.
Absolutely against that. And I will say on energy, this is something y'all understand, but it is not widely understood. I think Bitcoin mining is incredibly positive when it comes to energy, and I think there's a great story to be told. You know, you do mining out in West Texas. As you know, out in the Permian Basin, you've got flared natural gas. If you're drilling an oil well, there's predictably natural gas that comes up with the oil, and if you happen to have a natural gas pipeline there, that's great. You can capture it and earn a revenue stream from that. But if there's not a pipeline, it is usually not economically efficient to do anything with that gas. And so what happens right now is you light it on fire, and you look out over West Texas, and you just see flames burning on the horizon of flared gas. Now, flared gas is not great for the environment, and it's also a waste of a valuable resource. One of the great things that Bitcoin mining can do is go right at the wellhead, capture that gas, and translate it directly into revenue through Bitcoin mining. I think there's also a really powerful story to be told on Bitcoin about its ability to facilitate alternatives, to facilitate wind and solar. Look, as y'all know, sometimes the planet has an inconvenient way of the sun shining in really remote places and the wind blowing in really remote places. And if you're trying to build solar arrays or windmills and they're not electricity transmission lines, you don't have an ability to capture the revenue from that. And what Bitcoin mining enables you to do is, with the first windmill in the middle of nowhere, capture the revenue and make it profitable. And over time, if you build a large enough array, at some point, the economics can work to build an electricity transmission line. But one of the ways I like to think about Bitcoin is as a battery. It's not just a store of value, it's not just currency, it's not just digital gold, but it is also a way of storing energy. And I think that is very valuable for energy writ large.
And when you think about the fact that this country has most probably a $3 trillion deficit in transmission capacity, which is keeping more of these solar projects and wind projects from being able to be built because they can't be financed, there should be more Bitcoin mining associated with these sites.
Yeah.
Right. And so.
And by the way, you asked about tax laws. I will say I've been drafting legislation. I'm quite interested in looking at a way to incentivize using flared gas for Bitcoin mining, because there you've got a positive externality, that avoiding that pollution is good for everyone. And so I think that's a legitimate governmental role, to encourage something that is a public good at the same time that it makes sense for private individuals.
Yeah, as you may or may not know, we started a pilot project in Utah to actually mine Bitcoin on landfills to use the methane gas from landfills.
Yeah.
We're big believers in methane flare.
And in Washington, we produce a lot of garbage.
It's a lot of hot air too. So, I mean, if you think about the future and the broadened role Bitcoin can play, you know, it plays two roles really. One, in the developed world, it's this great asset for investors, right? It's had a huge return, and we're now even starting to see pension funds starting to invest. The ETFs have been improved. But in the developing world, you have upwards of 2.6 billion people who are affected by governments devaluing their currencies.
Yes.
This is a huge number of people, and Bitcoin plays a very specific role in that. And I think, you know, we certainly applaud your efforts to make sure that Bitcoin remains free in this country and it remains free in the world. And just wanted to get your thoughts. What else do you think, from a foreign policy perspective, we should be thinking about relative to Bitcoin and how we can help developing countries and these 2.6 billion people get a better benefit out of Bitcoin?
Yeah, look, that is a very important part of the story that I think we collectively need to do a better job telling. You know, it's interesting if you look at the developing world that you see sometimes technology skipping development. So for example, in the United States, you look at telephones. And remember telephones, when they first started, you had the switchboard operator moving cords, and then we all had landlines, or those of us old enough to had landlines. And now it's interesting, you look at the developing world in Africa or Latin America, you see many people skipping landlines altogether and going straight to cell phones, where they don't even put in the infrastructure for landlines anymore because of that technology skipping ability. And I view Bitcoin as a similar aspect. Look, having aspect to banking infrastructure is incredibly important. It's incredibly important for personal savings. It's incredibly important for accessing capital, whether it is to buy a home or to start a business or to run a business. But in a lot of parts of the world, that there is not a banking system that is secure and reliable. And if you're a subsistence farmer in Bolivia, and what small savings you have, you don't have a reliable way to safeguard it. You can dig a hole and put it in your backyard, but that's not a terribly effective way to do it. Bitcoin, if you can get access to a cell phone, you can store value in a way the government can't take it, and the cartels can't take it, and the bad guys can't take it. And I view that as a generation and a technology skipping development, providing banking and the ability to instantaneously and cost-free engage in a financial transactions. That's an enormous benefit for billions of people that don't have it right now. And I will say, look, telling the story of Bitcoin, there's still a lot of people, whether it is in Washington or just generally in life, that don't quite understand what's going on here. And I think collectively telling that story better is really important.
Great. Senator, I thank you for your time. I thank you for your support from the industry and for the industry, and I thank you for mining Bitcoin.
It is a pleasure and a privilege, and God bless you guys.
So there you have it. Senator Ted Cruz is a Bitcoin miner. So hopefully this will mean that we'll have some good, positive Bitcoin and crypto related legislation to try to help our industry along and protect what we already have built. I hope you enjoyed the video. I thought it was a very interesting fireside chat. If you enjoyed the video, like I said, hit the like button, consider subscribing to my channel, and don't forget to keep it decentralized for the greater good.
The greater good.